He was a billionaire testing her honesty with a forgotten black card. She was a waitress who chose to feed someone in need instead of keeping the fortune. Neither of them knew that this act would forever change everything they thought they understood about loss, love, and destiny. But no one imagined what would come next. If you're loving this story of unexpected love and redemption, hit that like button and drop a comment below telling me what you think will happen next. Your support means everything. The crystal chandeliers of Le Ciel Étoilé cast dancing shadows across white linen tablecloths as Alexander Stone checked his Patek Philippe for the third time in 10 minutes. The most exclusive restaurant in Manhattan hummed with the quiet conversations of New York's elite, but Alexander heard none of it. His steel-gray eyes tracked the young waitress moving between tables with practiced efficiency. Her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail that somehow made her more striking than the designer-clad women dining around her. Nikolai Martinez had worked at Le Ciel Étoilé for 6 months, and in that time, she'd perfected the art of invisibility. She moved through the restaurant like a shadow, serving the wealthy and powerful while they barely acknowledged her existence. Tonight was no different, except for the man at table 7 who hadn't stopped watching her since he arrived. "Your Chateau Margaux, sir." Nikolai placed the wineglass on the table with steady hands, though her pulse quickened under his intense gaze. Alexander Stone. She knew who he was. Everyone did. At 29, he'd built Stone Industries into a tech empire worth billions, and his face graced the cover of Forbes more often than most people changed their sheets. "Thank you." His voice was deep, controlled, carrying the confidence of someone who'd never heard the word no. "You've worked here long?" 6 months, sir." Nikolai kept her eyes down, professional, distant. She'd learned early that engaging with men like him only led to trouble. "And before that?" The question caught her off guard. Customers rarely asked about her life. She was part of the scenery like the paintings on the walls. "Various places, sir. Will there be anything else?" Alexander leaned back, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "No, that will be all." She nodded and retreated, feeling his gaze burn into her back. What she didn't see was Alexander deliberately sliding his black American Express Centurion card under his napkin, before standing to leave 20 minutes later, walking out of the restaurant without settling his bill. Nikolai discovered the card 10 minutes after his departure, her heart stopping when she realized what it was. The infamous black card, unlimited credit. She'd heard the stories of people finding these cards and living like royalty for days before getting caught. Her hands trembled as she held it, the weight of temptation heavy in her palm. The smart thing would be to run it to the manager immediately. The desperate thing would be to use it. God knew she needed the money. Her studio apartment in Queens barely qualified as habitable, and she hadn't bought new clothes in 2 years. She was 3 months behind on her student loans from a degree she'd never get to use. "Nikolai?" Marco, the manager, appeared at her elbow. "Table 7 left without paying?" He forgot his card. She held it up, making her decision in that instant. "I'll take it to the address on file tomorrow morning. It's late and Mr. Stone probably doesn't even realize it's missing yet." Marco frowned but nodded. "Fine, but first thing tomorrow, understand? That's Alexander Stone's card. We can't afford problems with someone like him." "I understand." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but the plan already forming in her mind tasted worse. She finished her shift at 11, her feet aching and her back screaming from 8 hours of navigating between tables. The October air bit through her thin jacket as she stepped onto Fifth Avenue, the black card burning like a brand in her apron pocket. She could buy a real coat, pay her rent, maybe even splurge on a decent meal instead of the ramen that had become her primary food group. "Please, miss, please." The small voice stopped Nikolai in her tracks. A little girl stood near the restaurant service entrance, no more than 7 years old, with tangled blonde hair and a face smudged with dirt. Her clothes were too thin for the cold, and her blue eyes held the kind of haunted look that Nikolai recognized all too well. It was the same look she'd seen in her own reflection years ago, back when she was the child begging on streets. "Sweetie, where are your parents?" Nikolai knelt down, ignoring the protest of her tired knees. "Don't have any." The girl's voice was barely a whisper. I'm hungry. Do you have food? Nikolai's heart cracked. This wasn't the first time she'd seen this child. For the past 3 weeks, the little girl had appeared almost every night, always after her shift, always asking for food. Nikolai had shared her own meager meals, but tonight, the girl looked worse than ever. Thinner, more desperate. What's your name, honey? Emma. Emma, I'm Nikolai. Listen to me very carefully. Are you sleeping somewhere safe? The girl's eyes dropped. Sometimes the shelter, sometimes the subway. It's warmer there. The black card seemed to vibrate in Nikolai's pocket, demanding attention. She could use it for herself, or she could use it for something that actually mattered. The decision wasn't really a decision at all. Come with me, Emma, we're going shopping. The all-night pharmacy on Lexington Avenue blazed with fluorescent light, a beacon in the Manhattan darkness. Nikolai moved through the aisles with purpose, Emma's small hand clasped tightly in hers. She grabbed children's cold medicine, antiseptic cream for the cuts on Emma's hands, vitamins, protein bars, fruit, sandwiches, a warm jacket, socks, gloves. The pile grew until the shopping basket overflowed. The cashier's eyes widened at the black card. Ma'am, for purchases over $500, I need to see ID and call for authorization. Nikolai's pulse hammered. This was it. The moment where her good deed could become a crime. Of course. She handed over her driver's license, praying that Alexander Stone hadn't yet reported the card missing. The seconds stretched into eternity as the cashier made the call. Emma pressed against Nikolai's side, sensing the tension. Finally, blessedly, the cashier nodded. All approved, have a good night. They emerged into the cold with bags full of supplies, and Nikolai felt something she hadn't experienced in years. The satisfaction of doing the right thing. Consequences be damned. She took Emma to a bench near Central Park, making sure the child ate slowly, carefully, watching as color returned to those pale cheeks. Why are you being nice to me? Emma asked between bites of a turkey sandwich. Nobody's nice without wanting something. Because I used to be you, Emma. I know what it's like to be hungry and cold and invisible. Nikolai brushed the girl's tangled hair back from her face, and in the glow of the streetlight, something caught her attention. A small birthmark behind Emma's left ear, shaped like a star. Her blood ran cold. She'd seen that birthmark before. 3 years ago, on every news channel in the country. The missing Stone heiress. The billionaire's daughter who'd vanished from her preschool, sparking a manhunt that dominated headlines for months before the trail went cold. Emma, what's your last name? The girl's expression shuddered. Don't have one, just Emma. But Nikolai knew. God help her, she knew. This child sleeping in subways and begging for food was Emma Stone. The daughter Alexander Stone had lost 3 years ago. The daughter he'd spent millions trying to find. The daughter whose disappearance had destroyed his marriage and, according to tabloids, his humanity. And Nikolai had just used his stolen credit card to save her. The irony was so sharp it could cut glass. The very man who'd tested her honesty had inadvertently provided the means to find his missing child. But how did she prove it? How did she approach a billionaire and tell him his daughter was alive without ending up arrested for credit card fraud? How did she explain that she'd known who Emma was and hadn't immediately called the police? Nikolai. Emma's voice was small, frightened. You look scared. Are you going to leave me too? No, baby, I'm not leaving you. Nikolai pulled the child close, feeling the fragile body shake with cold despite the new jacket. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Emma nodded against her shoulder, and Nikolai's mind raced through impossible scenarios. She'd been trained for situations like this back when she had another life. Back when she was Nicole Martinez, MBA from Stanford, Executive Vice President of Martinez Enterprises, before her uncle's betrayal had stripped away everything she'd worked for and forced her into hiding. She'd spent 2 years rebuilding herself from nothing, taking a different name, working jobs that kept her off the radar. She'd survived by being smart, by staying invisible, by never drawing attention. But this child changed everything. This child was a mirror of her own past, and she couldn't walk away any more than she could stop breathing. The black card had one more transaction in it before Alexander Stone would inevitably notice and cancel it. One chance to do something that mattered. Come on, Emma. We're getting you somewhere warm tonight. The extended stay hotel in Queens wasn't the Ritz, but it was clean and safe, and Nikolai paid for a week with the black card, knowing this was the transaction that would end her freedom. She tucked Emma into the clean bed, watching as the child's eyes fluttered closed almost immediately, exhausted from weeks of survival on the streets. Nikolai's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I know what you did with my card. Meet me at Le Ciel Étoilé tomorrow at noon or I call the police. All. Her hands shook as she read the message again. Alexander Stone knew. Of course he knew. He'd probably been tracking every transaction, waiting to see what she would do. This had been a test from the beginning, and she'd failed spectacularly. But as she looked at Emma sleeping peacefully, maybe for the first time in months, Nikolai realized she didn't regret a single choice. If going to prison meant this child got another chance at life, so be it. What she didn't know was that in his penthouse across the city, Alexander Stone was staring at security footage from outside the pharmacy. His heart stopped in his chest. Because there, holding the hand of his waitress thief, was a little girl with blonde hair and his late mother's blue eyes. His daughter, his Emma, alive. And the woman who'd found her was the same woman he'd set up to fail his test. The same woman who'd chosen to save a stranger's child instead of enriching herself. The same woman whose eyes held secrets he suddenly needed to unravel more than his next breath. Tomorrow's meeting had just become about something far more complicated than a stolen credit card. Tomorrow, Alexander Stone's carefully controlled world was about to explode, and he had a feeling the beautiful waitress with the kind heart and hidden past was going to be the one holding the detonator. Nikolai arrived at Le Ciel Étoilé 15 minutes early, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She'd left Emma at the hotel with enough food for the day and strict instructions not to open the door for anyone. The little girl had clung to her, terrified of being abandoned again, and Nikolai had promised something she had no right to promise, that everything would be okay. The restaurant looked different in daylight, less magical, more clinical. Marco intercepted her at the entrance, his expression a mixture of concern and accusation. Mr. Stone's people called this morning. They said you were meeting him here. His tone made it clear he knew something was wrong. Nikolai, what did you do? My job, Marco. I returned his property. The lie came easily, smoothly, honed by 2 years of hiding who she really was. Then why does he want to meet you privately in the wine cellar? Her stomach dropped. The wine cellar, private, away from cameras and witnesses. This was either going to be a quiet arrest or something far worse. Men like Alexander Stone didn't forgive people who stole from them, regardless of the reason. I'll handle it. She squared her shoulders, channeling the executive she used to be, the woman who'd negotiated million-dollar deals before breakfast. That woman was buried deep, but she wasn't dead. Not yet. The wine cellar was exactly what she'd expected. Exposed brick, dim lighting, thousands of bottles worth more than most people's houses. Alexander Stone stood with his back to her, his broad shoulders tense beneath a charcoal Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than her yearly salary. Close the door. His voice was controlled, but she heard the current of something dangerous underneath. Anger, grief, desperation. Nikolai closed the door, sealing herself in with Manhattan's most powerful predator. Mr. Stone, I can explain. Where is she? He turned, and the raw emotion on his face stole her breath. This wasn't the cold billionaire from last night. This was a father who'd spent 3 years in hell, and he was barely holding himself together. Where's my daughter? So he knew. Of course he knew. She'd been naive to think otherwise. She's safe. I made sure. You made sure? His laugh was harsh, broken. You stole my credit card, used it for God knows what, and you made sure my daughter was safe? Do you have any idea what I've been through, what I've spent trying to find her? He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides, grabbing her shoulders. Not violently, but with the desperation of a drowning man reaching for a lifeline. Tell me where Emma is. Right now. Nikolai forced herself to meet his eyes. those steel gray eyes that held 3 years of unanswered prayers. She's in a hotel in Queens. Room 304 at the extended stay on Roosevelt Avenue. But Mr. Stone, you need to understand. I need to understand? He released her, running his hands through his dark hair. My daughter has been missing for 3 years. 3 years of dead ends and false leads and watching my ex-wife destroy herself with guilt. And you, a waitress who stole my credit card, somehow found her in one night? I didn't find her, she found me. Nicole's voice steadied, finding strength in the truth. Emma's been coming to the restaurant for weeks, begging for food. I've been feeding her when I could, but last night she looked worse, sicker. So I used your card to buy her medicine, food, clothes, a safe place to sleep. Alexander's expression shifted, confusion replacing anger. You used my card to help her, not for yourself? I'm not a thief, Mr. Stone. I'm someone who recognizes a child in need because I used to be that child. She held his gaze, refusing to look away. I grew up in foster care after my parents died. I know what it's like to be invisible, to be hungry, to sleep on the streets when the shelters are full. I couldn't walk away from Emma any more than I could stop breathing. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. Then why didn't you call the police? Child services? Why take her to a hotel? Because I recognized her birthmark, the star behind her left ear. It was all over the news 3 years ago. Nikolai's voice softened. But Emma's terrified, Mr. Stone. She doesn't talk about her past, doesn't trust anyone. If I'd called the police, she would have run. I've seen it before with traumatized kids. They disappear into the system and sometimes they never come out. Alexander's hands clenched at his sides. She's been on the streets? My daughter has been living on the streets? I don't know where she's been, she won't talk about it, but wherever it wasn't good. Nikolai watched his face crumble, watched 3 years of controlled grief finally crack his armor. Mr. Stone, when you see her, you need to be gentle. She's not the same little girl you remember. She's survived something terrible, and she's fragile. I know how to handle my own daughter. The words came out sharp, defensive, but his eyes betrayed his fear. He had no idea how to handle this, how to reclaim a ghost. Do you? Because the Emma I know doesn't remember having a father. She told me she doesn't have parents. That's 3 years of memories, Mr. Stone. 3 years of whatever hell she's been living in, erasing everything that came before. Nikolai stepped closer, risking his anger for the sake of the child who'd stolen her heart in a single night. If you go in there like an avenging angel, demanding she remember you, you'll lose her again. This time forever. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths and impossible situations. Finally, Alexander's shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of him. Then what do I do? How do I get my daughter back? You let me help you. The words were out before Nikolai could stop them, reckless and stupid and completely necessary. Emma trusts me. She'll let me bring you to her, but you have to follow my lead, do exactly what I say, and put your ego aside. Can you do that? Alexander studied her with new intensity, seeing past the waitress uniform to the woman beneath. Who are you really? Because no ordinary waitress talks to me like this. No one talks to me like this. Nikolai's lips quirked despite the gravity of the situation. Someone who's not impressed by your billions, Mr. Stone. Money doesn't scare me. I've had it and lost it. What scares me is failing that little girl who's waiting for me to come back because I'm the first person in months who didn't treat her like garbage. You had money? His eyes narrowed, the brilliant mind that built an empire starting to piece together the puzzle. Past tense. What happened? That's not relevant to getting your daughter back. She turned toward the door, but his hand on her wrist stopped her. Everything about you is relevant now, Miss Martinez. Because like it or not, you're the only connection I have to Emma, and I'm going to find out every single secret you're hiding. His grip was gentle but firm, and when she looked back at him, she saw a different kind of danger in his eyes. Interest. Curiosity. The beginning of something that had nothing to do with his daughter, and everything to do with the spark that had ignited between them the moment their worlds collided. Then I guess you'll be disappointed, Mr. Stone. I'm just a waitress who made a choice. She pulled her wrist free, ignoring the heat his touch left behind. Now, are we going to get your daughter? Or are we going to stand here trading verbal jabs while she's alone and scared? We're going. He pulled out his phone, already moving. My driver will take us. And Miss Martinez? After we have Emma safe, you and I are going to have a very long conversation about grand larceny, obstruction of justice, and why the smartest woman I've met in years is serving wine for minimum wage. Looking forward to it. The sarcasm was automatic, defensive, but she saw the corner of his mouth twitch. Almost a smile, almost human. They rode to Queens in his Mercedes S-Class, the leather seats more comfortable than Nikolai's entire apartment. Alexander made calls, canceling meetings, alerting his security team, his movements precise and controlled. But she saw his hands shake when he thought she wasn't looking. Saw the way he stared out the window like he could will the car to move faster. Mr. Stone. She spoke quietly, not wanting to break whatever fragile truce they'd established. Emma calls herself just Emma. No last name. When you see her, don't push for information. Let her tell you what she's ready to tell you. Trauma doesn't follow timelines. How do you know so much about trauma? The question was direct, edged with the curiosity of someone who needed to understand everything. Because I lived it, because I study it, because some of us don't get the luxury of forgetting pain, Mr. Stone. We learn to carry it instead. She met his gaze, letting him see the truth she usually kept hidden. I have a degree in psychology from Stanford, top of my class. I know how broken minds work because mine was broken once too. His expression shifted again, pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. Stanford, that's not cheap. How does someone with a Stanford degree end up serving tables? The same way someone's daughter ends up sleeping in subways, Mr. Stone. Life doesn't care about your credentials when it decides to destroy you. The hotel appeared before he could respond, shabby and unremarkable in the gray morning light. Nikolai led him to room 304, her heart pounding. Emma had trusted her. If this went wrong, that trust would shatter, and Nikolai knew from experience that once broken, trust never fully healed. She knocked softly. Emma. Sweetie, it's Nikolai. I brought someone to meet you. The door cracked open, revealing one blue eye and a tangle of blonde hair. You came back. I promised I would. Can we come in? Nikolai felt Alexander tense beside her, his entire body coiled with the need to rush forward, to grab his daughter and never let go. She put a hand on his arm, warning him to wait. Emma opened the door wider, and that's when she saw Alexander. The little girl froze, her eyes going wide with something Nikolai couldn't quite read. Not recognition. Not exactly. But something deeper. Cellular memory, maybe. The echo of a bond that couldn't be completely erased. Emma. This is Alexander. He's here to help us. Nikolai kept her voice steady, calm, even as she watched the most powerful man in New York fall to his knees in front of his lost daughter. Hi, Emma. Alexander's voice broke on her name, years of grief compressing into 2 syllables. You don't have to be scared. I'm not going to hurt you. Emma looked at Nikolai, seeking permission, seeking safety. Nikolai nodded, and slowly, carefully, the little girl stepped forward. She reached out one small hand and touched Alexander's face, tracing the wetness on his cheeks with wonder. Why are you crying? Emma asked. Grown-ups don't cry. This grown-up does. Alexander caught her hand gently, holding it like it might disappear. I'm crying because I'm happy to meet you, Emma. So happy. And in that moment, watching a broken father meet his lost daughter, Nikolai felt something shift in her chest. Something dangerous and impossible and completely inevitable. Because Alexander Stone wasn't just a billionaire or a test or a complication. He was a man capable of love deep enough to bring him to his knees. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. The penthouse overlooked Central Park like a kingdom surveying its domain. All glass and steel and money that whispered rather than shouted. Nikolai stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city sprawl beneath her feet, and tried not to feel like an imposter in Alexander's world. Emma slept in one of the guest rooms, finally bathed and fed and safe, under the watchful eye of a pediatrician Alexander had summoned within an hour of arriving home. She's malnourished but stable. Dr. Patricia Chen emerged from the bedroom, her expression professional but kind. No signs of serious physical abuse, but she's emotionally shut down. Won't talk about where she's been or what happened. I've recommended a child psychologist who specializes in trauma. Someone gentle. Whatever she needs. Alexander stood by the bar, a glass of scotch untouched in his hand. He hadn't left the penthouse in 6 hours, hadn't taken his eyes off Emma's door for more than a few minutes at a time. Cost isn't a concern. I know, Mr. Stone. I'll have Dr. Williams contact you tomorrow. Dr. Chen turned to Nikolai, studying her with interest. Emma asked for you 3 times while I was examining her. You've made quite an impression. I just fed her. Nikolai kept her voice neutral, uncomfortable with the attention. Anyone would have done the same. But they didn't. Alexander spoke quietly, his eyes meeting hers across the expanse of luxury. You did. Why? Because I remember what it feels like to be invisible. She turned back to the window, watching lights flicker to life across Manhattan as dusk settled. Because once upon a time, I was her, and no one stopped to help. I swore if I ever had the chance, I wouldn't make the same mistake. Doctor. Chen left with promises to return in the morning. And suddenly Nikolai was alone with Alexander Stone in a penthouse that cost more than most countries' GDP. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken questions and impossible situations. You can't go back to that apartment in Queens. Alexander set down his scotch, moving toward her with the controlled grace of a predator who'd spotted his prey. Emma needs stability and she trusts you. I'm asking you to stay. Help me navigate this, at least until she's settled. You're asking me to live here? Nikolai's laugh was sharp, disbelieving. Mr. Stone, I stole your credit card. I'm pretty sure cohabitation wasn't part of the punishment. I'm not punishing you. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could smell his cologne, some expensive thing that probably had a waiting list. I'm asking for help. Emma won't talk to me, she barely looks at me, but you? She lights up when you walk into the room. Whatever connection you two have, she needs it. I need it. And what do I get out of this arrangement? She faced him, refusing to be intimidated by his proximity or his power. Besides a fancy prison and the pleasure of watching you try to bond with your daughter. His jaw tightened. Name your price. Salary, benefits, whatever you need. I'll pay off your student loans, set up a trust fund, buy you a house, just stay. You think money solves everything, don't you? Nikolai's voice was soft, dangerous. That's your problem, Mr. Stone. You've lived in this world so long, you've forgotten that some things can't be bought. Emma needs time, patience, and someone who understands trauma. Those things cost nothing and everything, and your billions can't purchase them. Then teach me. The words came out raw, vulnerable. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be a father to a daughter who doesn't remember me. You have a psychology degree from Stanford and personal experience with trauma. I have money and desperation. That seems like a fair trade. Nikolai studied him, seeing past the arrogance to the terrified father underneath. This was a man who controlled empires but couldn't control the one thing that mattered, his daughter's heart. Fine. I'll stay for 1 month. Not as an employee, but as Emma's advocate. I answer to her needs, not your demands. And, Mr. Stone? She stepped closer, invading his space the way he'd invaded hers. If you try to buy your way into her affections or push her before she's ready, I'm gone, money or no money, understood? Understood. His eyes darkened, and she saw something flicker there that had nothing to do with his daughter. Interest. Attraction. The dangerous spark of chemistry that had been building since the moment they met. But we need to establish some ground rules, starting with what I call you. Miss Martinez is too formal for someone living in my home. Nikolai is fine. She refused to acknowledge the heat spreading through her chest, the awareness of him that made her skin prickle. And I'll call you Alexander since we're apparently playing house. We're not playing anything. His voice dropped, intimate and dark. I don't play, Nikolai, I win. And right now, winning means getting my daughter back and figuring out why the hell a Stanford graduate with a psychology degree is serving wine instead of running a practice. That's none of your business. She moved to step past him, but his hand caught her wrist, gentle but firm. It became my business the moment you used my credit card to save my daughter. Like it or not, we're connected now. I protect what's mine, and until we figure out this situation with Emma, you're under my protection. That means I know everything, starting with what happened to you. Let go of me." The words lacked conviction, and they both knew it. His touch sent electricity up her arm, unwanted and undeniable. "Why did you really help Emma?" Alexander's thumb traced her pulse point, feeling it race. "Was it just altruism, or was it something else? Because the way you look at her, the way you talk about trauma and invisibility, that's not clinical psychology. That's personal. I already told you. You told me facts. I want the truth." He pulled her closer, and she let him, hating herself for the weakness. What happened to Nicole Martinez that turned her into Nikolai the waitress? The use of her full name jolted her. He'd been digging already, putting together pieces of a puzzle she'd spent 2 years trying to bury. "How did you—" "I'm a billionaire with unlimited resources, Nikolai. Did you really think I wouldn't run a background check?" Nicole Martinez, former executive vice president of Martinez Enterprises, disappeared 2 years ago, after allegations of embezzlement. Charges were filed, then mysteriously dropped. The company folded 6 months later, amid scandal. His eyes bored into hers, demanding honesty. "So tell me, did you run because you were guilty or because someone set you up?" Nikolai jerked her wrist free, anger flooding through her veins like fire. "You had no right." "I had every right. You're in my home with my daughter. I need to know who you are." He didn't back down, didn't apologize. "Were you guilty?" "No." The word came out harsh, broken. "My uncle embezzled $40 million and made it look like I did it. By the time I proved my innocence, the damage was done. Clients abandoned us, investors pulled out, employees quit. The Martinez name became synonymous with fraud, and no one would hire me, not even for entry-level positions. So you changed your name and started over. What choice did I have?" Bitter laughter escaped her throat. "My degree was worthless. My reputation was destroyed. I was 28 years old with 6 figures in student debt and no prospects. So yes, I became someone else. Someone invisible. Someone safe." Alexander's expression softened, and she saw understanding dawn. "That's why you recognized Emma's trauma, because you lived it. Different circumstances, same result. Invisible. Don't psychoanalyze me." She wrapped her arms around herself, defensive. "You wanted the truth, you got it. Now you know I'm not a thief or a criminal. I'm just someone who made the mistake of trusting family. I know the feeling." His voice held shadows she hadn't heard before. "Emma's mother, my ex-wife Victoria, blamed me for the kidnapping. Said I was never home, that I prioritized business over family. She wasn't wrong. When Emma disappeared, Victoria fell apart. Pills, alcohol, anything to numb the pain. Last I heard, she was in a facility in Switzerland. Hasn't been sober in 2 years. The revelation hung between them, 2 broken people standing in a monument to success, while their pasts crumbled around them. Nikolai felt something shift, the animosity bleeding into understanding. They were more alike than different. Both wounded, both trying to survive. "I'm sorry." The words were inadequate, but sincere. "Don't be. I earned every moment of pain. I put my company before my family, and I paid the price." Alexander moved to the window, staring out at his kingdom. "But I have a second chance now. Emma's alive. She's here. And I'm not going to waste it by being the same man I was before." "That's good." Nikolai joined him at the window, maintaining careful distance. "Because that man would have already failed. Emma doesn't need a CEO. She needs a father. Then teach me how to be one." He looked at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes stole her breath. "I know we started badly. I know I tested you and you stole from me, and this whole situation is completely insane. But Emma needs us both. Can we declare a truce? For her sake?" "For her sake." Nikolai extended her hand, formal, safe. 1 month, then we reassess." Alexander took her hand, his grip warm and firm and lasting a beat too long. 1 month, but Nikolai, I should warn you, I'm very good at changing people's minds. By the end of 30 days, you might not want to leave. I'm very good at disappointing, arrogant billionaires." She pulled her hand free, ignoring the spark that lingered. "By the end of 30 days, you might be begging me to go." His smile was slow, dangerous, and completely male. "I don't beg, Nicolai, I negotiate. And something tells me we're going to have a lot of interesting negotiations over the next month." Before she could respond, Emma's door opened. The little girl stood in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, looking small and lost in an oversized t-shirt Alexander's housekeeper had found. "Nicolai?" Emma's voice was tiny, frightened. "Don't leave. Please don't leave." Every wall Nicolai had built, every defense she'd constructed crumbled at those 4 words. She crossed to Emma, kneeling down to eye level. "I'm not leaving, sweetie. I'm staying right here with you, I promise." "Forever?" The hope in Emma's voice was painful to hear. "For as long as you need me." Nicolai brushed blonde hair back from Emma's face and over the child's head. Her eyes met Alexander's. "We both are." And in that moment, standing in a billionaire's penthouse with a traumatized child between them, Nicolai realized she'd just made a promise that would change everything. Because Emma wasn't the only stone who needed saving. Alexander did too. And God help her, she was starting to want to be the one who saved him. 2 weeks into their arrangement, Nicolai had established a routine that kept her sane and Alexander at arm's length. Mornings with Emma. Breakfast, gentle conversations, art therapy techniques disguised as coloring. Afternoons while Emma napped. Research into child trauma recovery. Consultations with Dr. Williams via video call. Evenings. Family dinners where Alexander tried too hard and Emma retreated into silence, watching her father with the wariness of a wild animal observing a potential threat. And nights. Nights were the problem. Nicolai lay in her guest room, Egyptian cotton sheets, a mattress that cost more than her car, silence so complete it screamed, and thought about the man 3 doors down. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. The way his hand lingered when passing Emma between them. The way his voice dropped an octave when he said her name. She was in dangerous territory and she knew it. "You're falling for him," Dr. Williams had observed during their last session, her kind eyes missing nothing. "Your client's father. That's a complication." "Emma's not my client. I'm not practicing." Nicolai had deflected, but the psychologist's words haunted her. Because they were true. She was falling and she had no idea how to stop. The knock on her door came at midnight, urgent and quiet. Nicolai grabbed her robe, her heart hammering. Emma had nightmares sometimes, waking up screaming about shadows and cold and hunger. But when she opened the door, it was Alexander standing there, disheveled and desperate. "She won't let me near her." His voice cracked. "She had a nightmare and she's calling for you, and every time I try to comfort her she screams, 'What am I doing wrong?'" Nicolai didn't answer, just pushed past him to Emma's room. The little girl was huddled in the corner, sobbing, her face buried in her knees. The sight broke something in Nicolai's chest. "Emma, sweetie, I'm here." She knelt slowly, non-threatening, using the techniques she'd learned years ago. "Can you look at me?" Emma's head lifted, her face streaked with tears. The bad man. He was here. He was trying to take me. Ice flooded Nicolai's veins. "What bad man, Emma?" "Can you tell me what he looked like?" "Tall, dark hair, scary eyes." Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "He said I was bad, that I had to go back to the cold place." Alexander made a sound behind them, raw and wounded, and Nicolai shot him a warning glance. Not now. Not when Emma was this fragile. "There's no bad man here, sweetie. Just me and Alexander. You're safe." Nicolai opened her arms and Emma crashed into them, small body shaking with terror. "I've got you. I promise you're safe." It took 20 minutes to calm Emma down. Another 10 to get her back to sleep. Alexander stood in the doorway the entire time, watching Nicolai work magic he couldn't understand. Watching his daughter find comfort in a stranger while rejecting him completely. When Emma finally slept, Nicolai followed Alexander to his study. He poured himself 3 fingers of scotch and downed it in one swallow, his hands shaking. "She's remembering." His voice was hollow. "Whoever took her, wherever she's been for 3 years, she's starting to remember. And every memory makes her more afraid of me." "She's not afraid of you." She's afraid of men in general. Nikolai leaned against his desk, exhausted. Dark hair, tall, scary eyes. That's a description of her kidnapper. But Alexander, it's also a description of you. His glass shattered against the wall, scotch running down expensive wallpaper like tears. I would never hurt her. I spent 3 years looking for her. I've given up everything to get her back. I know that, but Emma doesn't. To her, you're a stranger who looks like her monster. Nikolai kept her voice gentle, clinical, even as her heart ached for both of them. We need to find out what happened to her, not just for your peace of mind, but for her healing. She can't move forward while she's trapped in whatever hell she survived. The FBI investigated for 18 months. They found nothing. Alexander slumped into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 29 years and then some. How are we supposed to find answers they couldn't? Because we have something they didn't. We have Emma, and she's starting to talk. Nikolai moved closer, drawn by his pain despite her better judgment. Doctor, Williams can use play therapy, art therapy, eventually direct questioning. It takes time, but traumatized children eventually tell their stories. We just have to be patient. I'm not good at patience. He looked up at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her breath catch. I'm good at action, at solving problems, at making things happen. This waiting, this helplessness, it's killing me. Welcome to parenthood. The words came out softer than intended. It's not about what you're good at, Alexander. It's about what Emma needs. And right now, she needs you to be someone different than who you've always been. I don't know how to be different. His confession hung in the air between them, honest and raw. I've been Alexander Stone, CEO, Master of the Universe, for so long. I don't remember how to be anything else. Nikolai made a decision that would haunt her. She crossed to him, placed her hand on his shoulder, felt the tension coiled there like a spring ready to break. Then learn. Emma's giving you the chance to become someone better. Don't waste it by being afraid. His hand covered hers, warm and strong and dangerous. I'm terrified, Nikolai. What if I can't do this? What if I get her back just to fail her again? Then you fail forward. You make mistakes and you apologize and you try again. She should pull away. Should maintain professional distance. Should remember all the reasons this was a bad idea. Instead, she squeezed his shoulder. But you don't give up. Emma's been abandoned enough. She needs to know you'll stay, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Alexander stood abruptly, and suddenly they were too close, the air between them charged with something that had nothing to do with his daughter. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. What about you, Nikolai? Will you stay when it gets hard? Or will you run like everyone else? This isn't about me. But her voice betrayed her, breathless and wanting. Isn't it? He stepped closer, crowding her against the desk. You live in my home. You care for my daughter. You comfort me at midnight. At what point does this become about us? There is no us. The lie tasted bitter. I'm here for Emma, that's all. Liar. His mouth was inches from hers, close enough that she could feel his breath. You feel this too, this pull, this need. I see the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. Alexander. His name was a warning and a plea. Tell me to stop. His lips brushed her jaw, feather-light, devastating. Tell me you don't want this and I'll walk away. I'll keep my distance. We'll pretend this moment never happened. She should tell him to stop, should push him away, should remember every reason this was wrong. Instead, she tilted her head, giving him access to her throat, surrendering to the inevitable. I can't. The confession broke something open inside her. God help me, I can't. Alexander claimed her mouth with a hunger that matched her own. 3 weeks of tension exploding into fierce, desperate need. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, and she went willingly, wrapping her arms around his neck and kissing him back with all the loneliness and longing she'd been suppressing. It was wrong. It was complicated. It was everything she'd sworn to avoid. It was perfect. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back in. Nikolai touched her swollen lips, horror replacing passion. This can't happen again. She stepped back, putting distance between them. I'm here for Emma. Getting involved with you jeopardizes everything. It's already happened. Alexander's eyes were dark, possessive. You can pretend it didn't, but we both know that changes nothing. This thing between us, it's not going away. Then we ignore it. She moved toward the door, desperate for escape. For Emma's sake, we pretend this never happened. Nikolai. Good night, Alexander. She fled before he could argue, before she could change her mind, before she could admit that he was right. Whatever was building between them wasn't going away. It was only going to get stronger, and that terrified her more than anything. The next morning brought new complications in the form of a woman Nikolai had only seen in tabloids. Victoria Stone swept into the penthouse like a hurricane, all blonde hair and designer clothes and barely concealed desperation. Where is she? Victoria's voice was sharp, demanding. Where's my daughter? Alexander emerged from his office, his expression carefully blank. Victoria, I didn't know you were back in the country. I got your message about Emma. Victoria's hands shook despite her imperious tone. 3 years, Alexander. 3 years of hell, and you didn't think to call me the moment she was found? I called you 2 weeks ago. You didn't respond. He kept his distance, and Nikolai saw the history between them, complicated and painful. Emma's not ready to see you yet. She's traumatized, Victoria. She needs time. She needs her mother. Victoria's eyes found Nikolai, narrowing with suspicion. And who the hell are you? The new nanny? Another one of Alexander's projects? I'm Nicolai Martinez. I'm helping Emma adjust. She kept her voice neutral, professional, even as Victoria's gaze stripped her bare. Of course you are. Victoria's laugh was brittle, sharp as glass. Alexander always did have a type. Young, pretty, desperate. Tell me, how long before he gets bored and trades you in for a newer model? That's enough. Alexander's voice cut through the room like a blade. Nikolai found Emma. She saved her when no one else could. You will treat her with respect, or you will leave. Victoria's face crumbled, the facade cracking. I just want to see my daughter. Please, Alexander, I'm clean. 60 days sober. I'm ready to be her mother again. Before Alexander could respond, Emma appeared in the hallway, drawn by the raised voices. Her eyes went wide when she saw Victoria, and something flickered across her face. Not recognition. Fear. No. Emma backed away, shaking her head. No, no, no. Make her leave. Make the bad lady leave. The room froze. Victoria made a sound like a wounded animal. Alexander looked gutted, and Nikolai understood with terrible clarity that whatever Emma had survived, Victoria was somehow connected to it. The bad man with dark hair and scary eyes. The bad lady. 2 pieces of a puzzle that was about to destroy everything. The silence after Emma's words was deafening. Victoria stood frozen, her face drained of color, while Alexander looked between his daughter and his ex-wife with growing horror. Emma, sweetie, come here. Nikolai moved toward the little girl, but Emma was already running, disappearing into her room with a slam that echoed through the penthouse like a gunshot. She doesn't mean that. Victoria's voice shook. She's confused, traumatized. She doesn't understand. Understand what, Victoria? Alexander's tone was deadly quiet. Why would my daughter call you the bad lady? What did you do? Nothing. I did nothing. Victoria's composure shattered completely. I've been in rehab, Alexander, Switzerland, remember? I wasn't even in the country when Emma disappeared. Then why is she terrified of you? Nikolai kept her voice level, watching Victoria carefully. Years of reading people, of surviving her uncle's betrayal, had taught her to spot lies. And Victoria was hiding something. I don't know. Victoria's hands clenched into fists. Maybe whoever took her looked like me. Maybe she's projecting. Children do that with trauma. You should know that, Miss Martinez, since you're apparently the expert now. Get out. Alexander's words were final, absolute. Until we figure out what Emma remembers and why she's afraid of you, you're not seeing her. I'll have my lawyers contact you about supervised visitation once she's stable. You can't keep me from my daughter. Victoria's voice rose, hysterical. I have rights. I'm her mother. You lost those rights when you spent 2 years in a drunken stupor while I searched for her. Alexander moved toward the door, opening it in clear dismissal. Leave, Victoria, now, before I have security remove you. Victoria's eyes blazed with fury and pain. She looked at Nikolai, and the hatred there was palpable. This isn't over. I don't know what game you're playing, Miss Martinez, but I will find out. And when I do, you'll wish you'd never heard the name Stone. The threat hung in the air as Victoria swept out, leaving destruction in her wake. Alexander slumped against the closed door, his face gray. She's involved. His voice was hollow. My ex-wife is involved in our daughter's kidnapping. How is that possible? We don't know that yet. Nikolai moved to him, careful not to touch despite wanting to offer comfort. Emma's memories are fragmented. The bad lady might not be Victoria. It could be someone who looked like her or someone Victoria knew. We need to talk to Emma. Let Dr. Williams guide her through this gently. I want answers now. Alexander pushed off the door, pacing like a caged animal. I want to know who took my daughter and why. I want to know if Victoria was involved, and if she was, I want to destroy her. And I want Emma to feel safe. Nikolai blocked his path, forcing him to look at her. Your need for revenge doesn't trump her need for healing. We do this carefully, Alexander, by the book, or we risk breaking her further. His jaw clenched, the battle between father and CEO raging in his eyes. Finally, he nodded. We do it your way. But Nikolai, if Victoria had anything to do with this, nothing will stop me from making her pay. I wouldn't expect anything less. She turned toward Emma's room, then paused. And Alexander, last night what happened between us was inevitable. He closed the distance between them, his hand cupping her cheek with devastating gentleness. I know you want to pretend it didn't happen. I know you're scared, but I meant what I said. This thing between us isn't going away. And now with Victoria back and Emma's memories surfacing, I need you more than ever. Not just for Emma. For me. Alexander. I'm falling for you, Nikolai. The confession stole her breath. I know it's too soon and too complicated and probably completely insane, but I can't stop it. Every time you walk into a room, every time you smile at Emma, every time you challenge me or push back or refuse to be impressed by my money, I fall a little harder. And I think you feel it too. She did. God help her, she did. But admitting it meant risking everything. We can't do this, not now. Emma needs stability. Not her father getting involved with the woman she depends on. Emma needs to see what real love looks like. His thumb brushed her lips, and she couldn't stop the shiver that ran through her. She needs to know that people can be good and kind and choose each other despite the obstacles. Isn't that what you're trying to teach her? That the world isn't just pain and abandonment? That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. But it's real. We're real. And I'm done fighting it. Before she could respond, Dr. Williams's urgent call came through. The psychologist had been reviewing Emma's drawings from their sessions, and she'd found something that changed everything. They spread the drawings across Alexander's desk, each one more disturbing than the last. Dark figures, cold rooms, chains. But it was the final drawing that made Nikolai's blood run cold. A woman with blonde hair standing next to a tall man, both of them watching a small figure huddled in a corner. Emma drew this during our last session. Dr. Williams pointed to symbols in the corner. These marks, they're repeated in several drawings. I think they're letters. EVI. Evi? Alexander frowned. What does that mean? Not Evi. Nikolai's hands shook as pieces fell into place. Evil. She's trying to spell evil. And these figures, the blonde woman and the tall man, Emma's labeled them. See? Bad lady, bad man. Victoria and someone else. Alexander's voice was steel. My ex-wife helped kidnap my daughter. There's more. Doctor. Williams pulled up another drawing, this one showing a building with distinctive architecture. Emma drew this when I asked her about the cold place. I had my assistant run it through image recognition. It's a warehouse in Red Hook, abandoned for years, owned by a shell corporation. Trace the corporation. Alexander was already on his phone, barking orders to his legal team. I want to know every person connected to that property. I want financials, phone records, everything. and get the FBI back on this case, now. The next 3 hours were a blur of phone calls, legal maneuvers, and piecing together a nightmare. The warehouse was owned by a shell company connected to Victoria's brother, Marcus Webb, a man with a history of gambling debts, restraining orders, and connections to organized crime. A man who disappeared 3 years ago, right around the time Emma vanished. Marcus, Alexander's voice was hollow. Victoria's brother. He was at the house the day Emma was taken. He was saying goodbye, claiming he was moving to Europe for work. I never suspected. Because he was family. Nikolai understood the betrayal intimately. The people we trust most are the ones who can hurt us worst. The FBI descended on the warehouse within hours, and what they found confirmed every horrible suspicion. Evidence of long-term occupancy, children's clothes, DNA evidence matching Emma, and most damning of all, financial records showing regular payments from Victoria's trust fund to Marcus Webb for the past 3 years. Victoria had paid her brother to kidnap her own daughter. When the FBI brought Victoria in for questioning, she broke within an hour. The truth spilled out in gasping sobs and desperate justifications. She'd been angry at Alexander for prioritizing work, hurt by his emotional distance. In her twisted logic, she'd convinced herself that losing Emma would teach him a lesson, make him realize what mattered. The kidnapping was supposed to last a few days. Marcus would keep Emma safe. Victoria would play the devastated mother, and Alexander would finally pay attention to his family. But Marcus had other plans. He'd seen an opportunity for long-term profit, bleeding Victoria's trust fund dry while holding Emma hostage. When Victoria tried to back out, he'd threatened to kill the child. So she'd paid. For 3 years, she'd paid, trapped in her own conspiracy, watching her daughter suffer because of her selfish, vindictive choice. She wanted to hurt me. Alexander sat in his study, a glass of scotch finally being consumed. She was willing to traumatize our daughter just to teach me a lesson about priorities. What kind of monster does that? The kind who never learned that love isn't a weapon. Nikolai sat beside him, close but not touching. Victoria's been arrested. Marcus is being hunted by every law enforcement agency in the country. Emma is safe. That's what matters now. Is it? He looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was unbearable. Emma was right to be afraid of her mother. The woman she should have been able to trust most in the world betrayed her in the worst possible way. How does she recover from that? The same way I recovered from my uncle's betrayal. The same way you'll recover from Victoria's. Nikolai took his hand, threading their fingers together. With time, with therapy, and with people who prove that not everyone is a monster. Emma has you now. She has me. She has safety and love, and a chance to heal. That's more than a lot of trauma survivors get. Stay. The word was raw, vulnerable. Not for a month. Not as Emma's advocate. Stay because you want to. Because this is your home. Because we're your family. Nikolai's heart hammered. This was the moment. The choice that would define everything. She could run, protect herself, maintain the wall she'd spent 2 years building. Or she could take the terrifying leap into trust, into love, into a future she'd stopped believing was possible. I'm scared. The admission cost her everything. I'm terrified that this is too good to be true. That I'll wake up and it'll be another betrayal, another loss. I've been invisible for so long, Alexander. I don't know how to be seen again. Then let me show you. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her like a promise. Let me prove that some people stay, that some love is real, that you deserve every good thing this world has to offer. And if I fail, if I can't be what Emma needs or what you want, then we fail together. His lips brushed her temple, gentle and sure. But Nikolai, you've already proven you're exactly what we need. You saved my daughter. You're saving me. The only question is, will you let us save you back? The tears came without warning, years of pain and loneliness and fear finally breaking through. She cried into his chest while he held her, solid and warm and real. When she finally pulled back, her decision was made. I'll stay. Not because I'm Emma's advocate or because you're paying me. I'll stay because somewhere in the chaos you both became my family too. And I'm done running from the people who matter. His kiss was different this time. Not desperate or forbidden, but tender and full of promise. A beginning, instead of a mistake. I love you, Alexander whispered against her lips. I know it's fast and crazy, but I love you, Nicolay Martinez, the woman who stole my credit card and my heart in the same night. I love you too. The words felt like freedom. Even though you're arrogant and controlling and probably going to drive me insane. Probably. His smile was devastating. I guarantee it. From Emma's doorway came a small voice. Are you kissing like in the movies? They broke apart to find Emma watching them with wide eyes and the first real smile they'd seen since finding her. Yes, sweetie. Nicolay held out her hand. Is that okay with you? Emma considered, then nodded solemnly. If you love him, does that mean you'll stay forever? You won't leave like Mommy did? I'm not going anywhere. Nicolay pulled Emma close, feeling Alexander's arm come around them both. We're a family now, the three of us, and families stick together. Even when it's hard? Emma's voice was small, hopeful, especially when it's hard. Alexander kissed the top of his daughter's head, his eyes meeting Nicolay's over the blonde curls. That's what real love does. It stays. And for the first time in 3 years, Emma Stone fell asleep between two people who loved her, safe and home at last. 6 months later, the penthouse had transformed from a monument to success into something warmer. Emma's artwork covered the refrigerator. Nicolay's psychology books lined the shelves. Alexander's ties were perpetually crooked because his daughter insisted on helping him dress each morning. They'd become a family in all the ways that mattered. Victoria's trial had been swift and devastating. Conspiracy to kidnap, child endangerment, fraud. 25 years minimum. Marcus Webb had been caught trying to flee to Mexico, facing even harsher charges. The media had feasted on the scandal for weeks before moving on to the next tragedy, leaving the Stone family to heal in relative peace. Emma was thriving. Dr. Williams reported remarkable progress in her therapy sessions. The nightmares had decreased from nightly to occasional. She'd started school, made friends, learned to laugh again. She still had moments of fear, times when shadows looked like monsters, but she had people who loved her through the darkness. Nicolay had officially opened her practice, specializing in childhood trauma. Alexander had funded the entire operation, refusing to hear arguments about independence or pride. You saved my daughter, he'd said. Let me help you save others. Her waiting list was already 6 months long, her reputation growing as the psychologist who understood trauma from the inside out. And Alexander had changed in ways that surprised everyone, including himself. He'd promoted his VP to CEO, taking a step back from daily operations to focus on what mattered. Family. He still worked, still built his empire, but now he was home for dinner. He attended Emma's school plays. He learned that success measured in love mattered more than success measured in zeros. You're fidgeting. Nicolay adjusted Alexander's tie for the 3rd time, amused by his unusual nervousness. It's just a charity gala. You've done hundreds of these. This one's different. His hands settled on her waist, pulling her close despite her protests about wrinkling his tuxedo. You look stunning, by the way. That dress should be illegal. Flattery won't distract me from whatever you're planning. She narrowed her eyes at him. The emerald gown had been a gift, designer label and probably obscenely expensive, but she'd learned to accept Alexander's gestures without fighting. Pick your battles, Dr. Williams had advised. Save your energy for things that matter. I'm not planning anything. His smile was pure innocence, which meant he was absolutely planning something. Emma burst into the room, a whirlwind of pink tulle and excitement. At 8 years old, she'd grown 3 inches and gained confidence that astounded everyone who knew her story. Is it time? Are we going to the fancy party? Almost, princess. Alexander knelt to adjust her dress, his movements gentle and practiced. 6 months had taught him the art of fatherhood. Remember the rules? Stay with Aunt Patricia. No running in the ballroom. Use my indoor voice. Emma recited the list dutifully, then grinned. And make sure I see when you do the big surprise. Emma, Alexander shot his daughter a look that lacked any real heat. That was supposed to be secret. Oops. Emma giggled, completely unrepentant, and Nikolai's heart squeezed with love for this child who'd brought them all together. What surprise. Nikolai looked between them suspiciously. Alexander Stone, what are you planning? You'll see. He kissed her nose, infuriatingly cryptic. Come on. The car's waiting. The Plaza Ballroom glittered with Manhattan's elite, all gathered for the annual Children's Hope Foundation Gala. Alexander had become the charity's biggest donor after Emma's rescue, funneling millions into programs that helped missing and exploited children. Tonight's event would raise another $5 million for the cause. Nikolai worked the room with practiced ease, surprised by how naturally she'd adapted to this world. She wasn't Nicole Martinez, disgraced executive, anymore. She wasn't Nikolai the invisible waitress. She was Dr. Nikolai Martinez, renowned child psychologist, Alexander Stone's partner and Emma's fierce protector. She'd found herself again, different than before but somehow more complete. You've done well for yourself. The voice came from behind her, male and unfortunately familiar. Nikolai turned to find her uncle, Ricardo Martinez, looking older and smaller than she remembered. Ricardo. She kept her voice neutral, aware of the audience around them. I'm surprised to see you here. I wanted to apologize. His eyes held genuine remorse, but Nikolai had learned to trust actions over words. What I did to you, the embezzlement, destroying your reputation, it's eaten at me for 2 years. I was jealous of your success, angry that my brother left the company to you instead of me. But that's no excuse for what I did. No, it's not. Nikolai felt Alexander materialize beside her, a silent support. You stole from the company, framed me, and destroyed everything my parents built. An apology doesn't fix that, Ricardo. I know. That's why I've spent the last year working with the FBI to recover the money and clear your name. The charges against you are officially dropped. Your reputation is restored, and I've accepted a plea deal that includes 5 years in prison and full restitution. Ricardo's voice cracked. I can't undo the damage, Nicole, but I can make sure the truth is known. You were innocent. You've always been innocent. The words should have brought satisfaction, vindication, triumph. Instead, Nikolai felt only sadness for the years wasted, the trust destroyed. Thank you for telling me. And Ricardo, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry your guilt anymore. Ricardo nodded, tears in his eyes, and walked away. Alexander's arm tightened around her waist. You okay? I am. And she was. The past no longer had power over her. She'd built something new, something real, something that couldn't be stolen or destroyed. Let's enjoy the party. Dinner was elegant, speeches were inspiring, and Emma behaved perfectly while seated with Dr. Williams at their table. The auction raised obscene amounts of money for worthy causes. And then, as dessert was served, Alexander stood and took the microphone. Thank you all for coming tonight, and for your generous support of the Children's Hope Foundation. This cause is deeply personal to me, as many of you know. 6 months ago, my daughter Emma was returned to me after 3 years missing. The reunion was made possible by one remarkable woman who chose compassion over self-interest, who saw a child in need and refused to look away. Nikolai's heart started hammering. This wasn't part of the program. She glanced at Emma, who was practically bouncing with excitement. Nikolai Martinez walked into my life during my darkest hour and brought light back into it. She saved my daughter. She saved me. She taught me that real wealth isn't measured in dollars but in moments, in laughter, in the people we love and who love us back. Alexander stepped off the stage, moving toward their table. She's been my partner, my conscience, my best friend. And if she'll have me, I'd like her to be my wife. The ballroom erupted in gasps and applause as Alexander dropped to one knee, producing a velvet box that held a ring so perfect it stole her breath. Emerald center stone surrounded by diamonds, elegant and timeless. Nikolai Martinez, will you marry me? Will you officially become part of this chaotic, beautiful family we've built? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that some love stories start with stolen credit cards and end with happily ever after? Tears blurred her vision. Emma was clapping frantically at the next table. Dr. Williams was dabbing her eyes, And Alexander knelt before her, this impossible man who'd taught her to trust again, to love again, to believe in second chances. That depends. She managed a watery smile. Are you going to keep being arrogant and controlling and driving me insane? Absolutely. His grin was devastating. But I'll also love you fiercely, support your dreams, and never let you forget how extraordinary you are. Is that a yes? Yes. The word came out as a laugh and a sob. Yes, I'll marry you, you impossible man. Alexander slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that made the ballroom erupt in applause and cheers. When they finally broke apart, Emma was suddenly there, launching herself into their arms. We're really a family now? Emma's voice held wonder. Forever and ever? Forever and ever. Nikolai hugged the little girl tight, feeling Alexander's arms around them both. Nothing will ever change that. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations, champagne toasts, and plans for the future. Nikolai floated through it all, her hand constantly finding Alexander's, the ring on her finger catching light and throwing rainbows across the ballroom. Later, after Emma was asleep and they stood on the penthouse balcony looking out at their city, Alexander pulled Nikolai close. Thank you. His voice was quiet, reverent, for saying yes, for staying, for loving us even when we were broken. You saved me too, you know. She leaned into him, content and complete. I was so lost before I met you and Emma. I'd forgotten who I was, what I was capable of. You both reminded me that my past doesn't define my future, that I'm allowed to be happy. We're all allowed to be happy. Alexander kissed her temple. That's what we're teaching Emma. That bad things happen, people fail us, life gets hard. But there's always hope. Always a chance to start over. Always love waiting if we're brave enough to accept it. When did you become so wise? She teased gently, turning to face him. Ben. When I met a woman who used my credit card to save a child instead of herself. His thumb traced her jaw. You changed everything, Nikolai. My priorities, my perspective, my life. I was successful before you, but I wasn't alive. Not really. You and Emma, you're my purpose now. My reason for everything. No pressure or anything. But her smile took the sting from the words. What if I mess up? What if I'm not the perfect wife or mother? Perfect is boring. Alexander pulled her closer. I don't want perfect. I want real. I want the woman who challenges me, pushes back, refuses to be impressed by my bank account. I want the psychologist who knows exactly how broken I am and loves me anyway. I want you, Nikolai, just as you are. Then you're stuck with me. She kissed him softly. Because I want the workaholic CEO who learned to put family first. I want the father who reads bedtime stories even when he's exhausted. I want the man who tested my honesty and got more than he bargained for. I want you, Alexander, forever. They stood together in the New York night, two broken people who'd found wholeness in each other. While inside their home, Emma slept peacefully, dreaming of the family who chose her, the love that saved her, the future that was finally bright. 6 months ago, Alexander Stone had forgotten his black card to test a waitress's honesty. He'd expected to catch a thief. Instead, he'd found his daughter, his soulmate, and his redemption. Sometimes the best things in life came from the most unexpected places. Sometimes love started with a test and ended with a promise. And sometimes, the woman who stole your credit card also stole your heart.